going to use. If you can just give me an indication if it is visible, then we can continue. So am I audible? And
yes, we can see and we can hear you.
all right, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to start immediately, colleagues. So thank you for inviting us to discuss this topic that is so close to our hearts. The topic of our presentation is what all citizens want, a sustainable democracy and service delivery. Now, you will know that foremost authors have suggested that democracy is not about what we as citizens have as such, but rather what we do. And it is therefore noted that literature emphasizes the importance of citizen participation in the governance of a democracy. Now, unfortunately, it is also evident that citizen participation does not always prove to be that effective, and that members of the society are not always aware of what is expected of them to sustain and strengthen a democracy. Now, the presentation that we have prepared, if I can just move to the next slide. The presentation that we have prepared for you today reports on two separate studies. The first study reports on a survey that was targeting students enrolled for modules in public administration at a South African university. And we tried to establish what the current generation is doing to contribute and to strengthen the South African democracy. Now, against this background, we formulated 3 questions, which you will find on the screen. First of all, we wanted to know what is expected of citizens living in a democratic dispensation to ensure sustainability and long-term growth. Also, is it enough to educate citizens in the manner of voting? And also, does the citizen level of knowledge influence their perceptions of a democracy? Now, this first study was drawn from a sample of 175 undergraduate students, about 75% response rate. We used descriptive statistics to summarize the results in terms of frequencies and percentages. Now, the second part of this, the presentation today is all about the use of social innovation in the service delivery of local government through a comparison between the city of Ghent in Belgium and the Mangaung Metropolitan Municipality, which is a municipality in South Africa. A qualitative research design with a case study approach was used to investigate the use of social innovation in local government service delivery. And this research design enabled the collection of richer evidence about the 2 research questions, which you will also find on the screen. Firstly, how does citizen participation underpin social innovation during local government service delivery in the developed and developing countries? And the second question, how does the use of social innovation underpin local government service delivery in the city of Ghent and the Mangaung Metropolitan Municipality context? Now, here we also use semi-structured interviews and focus group discussions, which offered really the participants the opportunity to share insightful meaning and explanations of their experiences. The data were also analyzed. It involved transcribing the data from the audio recordings and the notes that were taken by the moderator. All right, so I think that will give you a good idea what we are going to talk about today. Like I said, this is a passion of ours, and I would like then to start with the first study, and I would like to introduce my colleague when we start with the second study. Now, looking at the first study, it focuses on citizen participation as a contributor to sustainable democracy in South Africa, and it was published, this specific article was published in the International Review of Administrative Sciences. Now, before I continue, there are 4 concepts that I just quickly want to capture before we go into the results. And first of all, you will see on the slide or the screen in front of you, we talk about citizens or democratic citizenship that features a bundle of enforceable rights and liberties, like policy benefits. But also there's a lot of enforceable obligations if you look at citizens, for example, towards the judiciary, for example, in a country. Now, for the purpose of today, the concept of citizenship is defined within the context of duties and responsibilities rather than the rights and the liberties of citizens. So if we then look at the concept of a democratic or democratic citizenship, we note the renewed emphasis on citizens' duties and the expectations that they are active in a society. And in order to do this, I think you will agree with me, they must be familiar with and respect the institutions of democracy, the electorate system, for example, or the freedom of speech, information and association, etc. The second concept on the screen is that of sustainability. Sustainable development is defined as a development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So sustainability is seen as the foundation of today's leading global network, and you are all familiar with the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The third concept that I just want to confirm is that of democracy. We all know where the term comes from, the history, the rich history of a democracy. But this first concept is today about citizens, but also what those citizens do to uphold and strengthen a democracy to ensure sustainability. So citizens as seen as to have specific functions to contribute to their country's democracy or democratic regime. And it is therefore then stated here that citizens have a leadership role in a democracy. They need to own the democracy by being active players. The last concept, colleagues, is that of service delivery. Service delivery can be defined as any contact with the public administration during which citizens or residents seek to provide data, handle their affairs, or fulfill their duties. We all know that the state has a vital role in delivering a wide array of public services, and these services should be delivered in an effective manner. All right. Now, I would like to move very briefly, without wasting your time, to the background of the study. So you will find in the next 2 slides, I just want to confirm again that we are all on the same page. Now, let us briefly recap the development of the South African democracy. The history of our democracy can actually be divided into 2 eras. The first part that you see on the screen refers to the period where we had the white minority government, and that was before 1994, which had the intention to govern according to what we called the apartheid policy or system of segregation. The white minority government, you will see on the screen, founded its democratic ideologies mainly in colonialism, and the influence of the British was quite strong. This brings us then to the second part, of the establishment of our democracy. And this second era refers to the democracy after our first general elections in 1994, which really saw a black majority government come into power and govern the country more openly and in a more democratic manner. Now, the group that came into power, you might know the abbreviation, the ANC. It stands for the African National Congress. It's the mouthpiece of the oppressed black majority. Started with, for example, the Bill of Rights, demanding lifting all discriminating practices in South Africa. But also around this time, it's not only the pressure that we felt from within the country borders that bring an end to this apartheid regime. It was also the international pressure that we felt through various sanctions that were placed on South Africa. Now, in 1990, the former President F.W. de Klerk and his National Party were forced to bring the white minority government to an end. And later that same year, Nelson Mandela was set free. And that followed a period of negotiations. And the months that followed thereafter were not without challenges, and many serious discussions took place. It was quite a turbulent and uncertain time in South Africa, because all South Africans had to come to terms with the new way of living. And a direct outcome of these negotiations was then the first democratic elections in South Africa. Now, you will find, if I can just go back to the previous slide, the South African democracy is deeply encapsulated in citizen participation, holding citizen participation as a critical element for the sustainability of our country. It is argued that the South African education system is not adequately informing or preparing South Africans, both young and old, to promote and sustain democracy in the country actively. And to this effect, the focal point in citizen education should be the upcoming generations and the leaders in society via responsive curricula in secondary and tertiary education. Now, and therefore, citizen participation has been placed high on the South African national agenda, and the democratic governance increasingly expect citizens to get involved in the process of sustaining a democracy. So that was just a little bit of a background. Let's move towards the slides and the results. The next three slides will give you a good idea of the results. So the first issue that we addressed with the students was to discuss what citizens living in a democratic dispensation are expected to do to ensure a long-term growth. Now, excuse me, the vast majority of the respondents commented on the common denominator of participation in various forms. It was therefore evident that respondents deemed their input into the democratic process as very important. And the fact that the respondents view participation as necessary might be a result of their knowledge of a proper democracy. As you will recall, these are students within public administration. So it might be that their knowledge influenced their decision. Then they also mentioned abiding by the law was the second most frequent response given by the respondents. The question is whether the responses arises from perceptions regarding the levels of crime in the country at the time of the survey, maybe. You will also note on the screen the aspect of access to voting was also well represented, and it may be expected in the post-apartheid South Africa. Now, interesting, it appeared that the respondents view this right as a given and not as a possibility. And then you will also see the issue of tolerance towards each other also appeared necessary, although less so than the need for participation and nation building. That brings us to the second question that we would like, or results that we would like to share with you. On this slide, it shows you the responses to the question about the best description of a democracy. Now, the selection solicited information about knowledge of proper democracy, irrespective of the respondents' opinion of the success of the current regime. So although relatively few respondents fell into the disagree column, the last dark blue column, a surprising number of respondents thought that some of the opinions given in column 1 were not important in describing a democracy. However, it is noted that most participants again identify a constitution as being most important. This is likely to be ascribed to the hype created in the country regarding the importance of a constitution. It is also commonly advocated in South Africa that our constitution is one of the best in the world to foster equality, non-discrimination, and citizen rights. So it is a document that is well known. The issue of equality is also viewed as fundamentally necessary. If you look at the screen, among South Africans, I think it's a percentage of 85% of respondents agreed with the statement. This was also expected in the light of the exposure that the issue of gender equality and the law has received over the past few years. In recent times, headlines have reflected many issues related to equality, including concerns about specific individuals considering themselves above the law. And that again brings the independency of the judiciary into question, the freedom of the media, equality, equal opportunities for designated groups, etc. And this issue of representation manifested notably in the responses. If you look at the screen, with citizens have a say in who governs their country, citizens participate in the affairs of the country, and Parliament representation reflects the demographics of the society, also receiving scores in the 80s. That brings me to the next slide, the role of the citizen in sustaining democracy, the question reflected here. The aim was to confront participants with the issue of personal responsibility rather than expectations. So it was evident in general, respondents considered notably fewer of the variables to be unimportant. This highlights the respondents' opinion of the co-responsibility of citizens in a democratic process. And again, as previously observed, the issue of participation seems to be of significance, importance, followed by education and job creation. Now, at the time of the study, the issue of education and job creation were viewed as critical priorities in the country, which might have influenced some of these responses. So we also had a final open question where we ask whether they currently contribute to sustaining the democracy in South Africa, and they all said yes, they do. And when we asked and probed to ask the students, how do they contribute? They said they vote. So it seems they felt that that is the most important contribution that they can make, of which we also see that some students did not answer this. There were a few that didn't want to answer it, and the reason was given for not contributing to a democracy, including I'm not a South African citizen, I don't see the value of voting. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is more or less the results of the first study. I just want to, I'm nearly going to conclude with this first study, just quickly look at a summary or a synopsis of key literature As the study used a sample of students enrolled for a university and for the modules in public administration, it was considered essential to reflect also on the role of education as a contributor to the perceptions of the broader society. And here are just a few authors that I highlighted. We know in South Africa, we all say that the education of our citizens should be viewed as one of the primary responsibilities of our country, because it gives everyone equal opportunities. And also it puts the citizen in a position of providing his or her dependents with knowledge, and then to make an informed decision. So education in South Africa is really regarded as fundamental as an enabling activity. We can also see on the slide, Stankov, for example, wrote an article on citizen participation in public governance, incontestable advantages, but also mentioning the risks. And this paper explores the crisis of contemporary democracies and citizen participation. The reasons for the growing discrepancy between citizens' demands and the government actions are presented in this paper. And the authors conclude that citizen involvement might be very beneficial under certain circumstances, but under other circumstances, it might not be. It was a very interesting paper. Veldik, for example, referred to the possible impact of education on sustaining democracy. The article focuses specifically on the role of women in democracy. Ile et al. 2010 stated that citizens have to be more involved in the affairs of the state. They must remain vigilant to ensure consistent levels of accountability and responsive to their own needs. They also mention here that for a democracy to be effective, there must be a mutual, beneficial relationship between government and citizens. Some of the other authors on the screen you will see says democracy takes patience and participation from citizens. It's believed that freedom is closely linked to the responsibility, and that democracy is a daily process, a continuous effort. It is never complete. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to now move towards my colleague. I have some lessons learned from this study. I think if I can conclude this first study, it's all about education. South African, being a young democracy, we are 27 years old, has far succeeded in achieving a certain degree of success in establishing the fundamentals of democracy. However, the South African government is committed to the Sustainable Development Goals, enhancing education, eradicating poverty, for example, but the country is still facing unique challenges in sustaining a democratic dispensation. Colleagues, I want to thank you for now, and I would like to give over to my colleague.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As I was introduced by my colleague, Professor Liezel Lues, my name is Maréve Biljohn, and I will be doing a presentation on study 2, which is entitled Social Innovation and Service Delivery in Belgium and South Africa. Before I continue, I just want to check with the host whether I'm audible. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you and we can see.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, now as I continue with the presentation, I will just stop my video for now because sometimes it affects the stability of the internet. But once we have questions, I will turn my video on again. Thank you, Professor Lues. So the study presented by Professor Lues, ladies and gentlemen, focused a lot on what citizens can do, or what citizens are supposed to do or expected to do in terms of a democracy. In this second study, we focus more on the role of municipalities or local governments or regional governments, as they are called in some countries, in terms of providing an enabling environment for citizens to contribute to whether it's sustainable service delivery or to address service delivery challenges, or to be part of solutions and decision-making processes when it comes to service delivery. And in terms of that enabling environment and framework, we have looked at the concept of social innovation and how it can be used to enable citizens and to empower citizens to be part of service delivery improvement as well as its enhancement. Now, in terms of the concepts for this study, which is on the next slide, there are three important concepts that I would like to highlight. The first one is then the concept of social innovation. The second one is the concept of citizen participation. And the third concept is the concept of service delivery. But I will not be reflecting on the third concept as my colleague has already covered it during her presentation on study 1. Concerning the concept of social innovation, this concept is considered by some as a process. In other words, what are the unique collaborations, the networks, partnerships, co-production, cooperation, or co-creation that is necessary or that takes place when social innovation is applied? So that's the first focus. And then in addition to that, the second focus of social innovation is then how it is applied to attain certain or deliver on or address certain societal problems or challenges. And when it is used in that context, it's usually applied to address a specific goal or aim. And that brings me to the three schools of thought that underpins this concept of social innovation. So there's been quite some research done on the concept of social innovation. And some scholars categorize or classify social innovation within the category or the school of thought of it being goal-oriented. And when social innovation is applied within this school of thought of being goal-oriented, it is then applied, if we think about the focus of this second study on service delivery, it can then be applied by municipalities, which was the focus of this study, to address certain service delivery challenges, to look at more innovative approaches or uses or applications to enhance how they deliver services to communities. So there's a specific goal, there's a specific aim that they have to address. And consequently, through the participation of citizens, as well as other stakeholders and community representatives within their geographical area, when social innovation is applied with this specific aim or objective, it can result in the improvement of services, the delivery of new services, but also the adaptation of existing services, so enhancing such services. But when social innovation is applied in the context of service delivery, and especially at our local government context, what is fundamental is the role that citizens play and the role that the administration or the council or the municipality as a collective facilitate for citizens to be part of social innovation processes. So what is important to remember then is that citizens should be fundamental to or central to service delivery and decision-making processes concerning service delivery. What makes social innovation so different to traditional forms of service delivery is the role that citizens then start playing in co-planning services. So now we no longer have just the municipality planning services, but there's a relationship of co-planning services, co-designing services, co-delivering services where possible, as well as the co-evaluation of services. And this allows or facilitates also more equitable service delivery because of that role that citizens are playing, more equal access to services, but it also allows government and local government to become more responsive to the service delivery needs and challenges that are experienced in society. And another key element, so those are some of the key elements of using social innovation through this first school of thought. A last key element is then that it contributes towards improving the quality of life of citizens. Because if you look at the purpose for which government is created and exists and organs of state, then that's a key role that they have to fulfill and contribute to the improvement of the quality of life of citizens. The second school of citizens, and I already highlighted this or touched on it briefly. So in terms of where the first school of thought looks at, we have to achieve a certain goal or aim. There's a arrive at addressing that specific societal problem. How do we arrive at implementing the solutions to those specific societal problems? And in terms of the role of citizens through collaborations, through engagement with the municipality, and through what the municipality initiates in terms of getting citizens involved, getting citizens to participate, it results in changes in the governance of relations between citizens and municipalities. So it can either make changes or improve governance relations between citizens and municipalities, and even result in new governance relations. Of significance about this and applying social innovation in this way is also how citizens or stakeholders who might have been excluded in the past from participating in participatory processes, is how opportunity and platforms can actually be created for them to become part of decision-making processes as well as governance processes about service delivery. And then lastly, the third school of thought is just a combined approach where the focus is not merely on achieving or reaching a certain goal, but also the processes underpinning. How do we collaborate as a municipality, as local government, with our different stakeholders and the innovative processes underpinning it? The second concept then is the concept of citizen participation. And my colleague has touched on that briefly. So citizen participation is then considered as all those efforts that are organized to ensure that citizens can influence governance processes, and especially the governance processes of regulatory institutions. And who or what are those regulatory institutions? For the purpose of this study, those regulatory institutions, for example, were the municipalities where this study or this research was undertaken, but in general, also our public sector organizations, our government organizations, or the municipalities. And control in this context refers to how those citizens can influence the resources, the use of resources, where those resources are allocated If we look in the municipal, at the municipal context, for example, in the South African context, as well as where the city of Ghent, where the research was undertaken, where both of them had plans where they prioritize service delivery. But to which extent do citizens participate in planning for services that are captured and prioritized in those plans? To which extent do citizens have a say, and are opportunities facilitated for them to express their specific preference or choice concerning service delivery, having an input in participatory budgeting, having input in terms of where development should take place within the municipal areas, and where the resources, how it should be distributed to different communities within the municipal area. Thank you, Professor. The next slide, please, on citizen participation. Yes, thank you very much. Now, citizen participation can be mandated by 4 groups. So Professor Lues, in her study, talked about democracy is actually about what citizens can do. How do they uphold a democracy? And the input and how we keep governments accountable in terms of the quality of service delivery. It is also important in terms of sustaining democracies. So the first group, or the first way in terms of how we can express our participation, is by voting, by electing who's going to govern us. In South Africa, our government or our local government, they usually serve for a term of 5 years. In the city of Ghent, where the study was undertaken, it's the same process. It's also 5 years. The second group, or way through how citizens can participate, is through policy processes, whether it's directly or through their representative institutions. Then in this third place, we as citizens expect value for money as service users, as end users, and as consumers for services. So when we are not happy about the quality of services, we must have the opportunity, or we must know which mechanisms and processes are at my disposal in terms of the policies and mechanisms of government or municipal governments to express my discontent or to expect accountability from municipalities. And Professor Lues also touched on that, and that is also where education becomes important. And then lastly, we see a lot of this happening where citizens organize themselves, especially in the city of Ghent. We saw that as well during our research. They organize themselves. There's a form of self-management. They start initiating developments in their neighborhoods or in the municipality. They approach the municipality. They take initiative in that regard. And as organized partners, they then reach out to the municipality, and they become part of a process of mobilizing resources for development and resources for service delivery. Thank you. The next slide, please. Now, if we look at a bit of background concerning this study, and how did we arrive at a study that looks at, or research that looks at, a comparison between a municipality in the global north, in Ghent, in Belgium, and a municipality in the global south, in Bloemfontein, in South Africa. In South Africa, since 2004, and that is what the research shows us, we have seen a significant amount of service delivery protest. So citizens are protesting, they undertake or get involved in public protests to express to municipalities that they are not happy about the quality of service delivery. And over the last 5 years alone, as well as including the second quarter of 2021, we have recorded a total of 783 service delivery protests in South Africa. The Mangaung Metropolitan Municipality in Bloemfontein in South Africa have also experienced service delivery protests. And similar to other municipalities in the country poor basic municipal service delivery and the poor quality of service delivery have been attributed as one of the biggest reasons for these protests. We are aware of the challenges that municipalities are facing, and also the support and assistance that national government through programs try and implement to improve service delivery in the country. But we also then ask ourselves the question, what could be the missing link? What is it that is maybe a gap in terms of improving service delivery, or bridge the gap between citizen participation and the role of the municipality in terms of involving citizens more in service delivery? Given the fact that the service delivery protests are increasing and citizens are expressing that they are not happy with service delivery. And that is where this concept of social innovation was deemed appropriate for us to explore, and then also to consider as a possible solution to look at how service delivery can be used. But in addition to that, we also found that Mangaung Metropolitan Municipality has had a city-to-city agreement and cooperation with the city of Ghent in Belgium for over several years. And the city of Ghent has been successful in using social innovation, and they've got several social innovation initiatives from the municipality side, but also some undertaken by the community. But that has never been explored in terms of a development project or some form of support and assistance in the framework of the city-to-city cooperation. Hence, we then decided to investigate the use of social innovation in local government service delivery through a comparison between these two municipalities, which are both cities. The next slide, please, Professor. In terms of the results and the discussions, on the slide currently what you are seeing are results reflected in terms of 5 key questions that we presented to the administration of both municipalities. On the left-hand side of the table are the results recorded for the Mangaung Metropolitan Municipalities, and on the right-hand side are the results recorded for the city of Ghent. The first question we posed to the administration or the officials of both municipalities was about the strategies used to elicit citizen participation during the planning, design, delivering, and evaluation of services. In the case of the Mangaung Metropolitan Municipality, so on the left-hand side of the screen, they indicated that at that stage when the research was conducted, that they do have community meetings, but they are currently considering reviving or looking at ways, how can we revive community participation? And they have discovered that the times at which they are having these meetings, it's not a conducive time, and it also affects participation, and it actually then results in poorer participation. And if they have it maybe at a later time during the day, also the location where they are having these meetings, then they could possibly enhance citizen participation. The Mangaung Metropolitan Municipality has a strategy, a 5-year strategy, and it's not the only municipality with such a strategy, but all municipalities in South Africa are required to have an integrated development plan. It's a 5-year plan that prioritizes service delivery for that municipality for 5 years. It's considered a legal document. It's developed in consultation with the community, as well as input from stakeholders, the national and provincial government. And the council of that municipality cannot just deviate from that plan. Now, during the development of that 5-year plan, which is linked to its budget, and its budget is also linked to that 5-year plan, When the municipality develops or looks at prioritizing and identifying which services do citizens want, which services can we deliver, they undertake what they call a cluster-based approach. So municipalities in South Africa are divided into neighborhoods or wards. And then one of their strategies is then to ensure that for each ward, there's also a ward-based plan. So in that plan as well, they identify what are the service delivery needs and priorities that we have to address in that ward. And that is further then also incorporated into this integrated development plan. In the case of the city of Ghent, they indicated that some of their initiatives or their strategies includes dialogue cafes. They also use a system of ward participation. They have neighborhood of the month, this policy participation, as well as co-production activities. And during their dialogue cafes, they create an opportunity for citizens to engage with what they call their deputy mayors. So the politician of their choice, they can have a conversation with that specific deputy mayor and inform the deputy mayor of what their concerns are. The second result or question posed was about how officials view the concept of social innovation. So what is their understanding of social innovation? In the case of Mangaung, they indicated that they are more familiar with the concept of innovation and that the use of social innovation is a concept that is currently under discussion. They also have initiatives such as establishing an innovation hub as one of their initiatives. For the City of Ghent officials, they viewed social innovation as one of their core or key priorities in everything that they do regarding service delivery. So they are constantly searching for new ways to improve things, to do things better, and also to look for renewals through how citizens participate in policy processes. The third question looked at how citizen participation underpins social innovation. So when social innovation is undertaken by these two municipalities, to which extent are citizens involved in social innovation and its processes? The Mangaung Metropolitan Municipality said that for them, they view citizen participation in social innovation with social cohesion, with the social enterprise movement, with delivering social services, social development, the role of non-governmental organizations, cooperatives, as well as non-profit organizations in service delivery undertaken by the municipality. The City of Ghent, on the other hand, though, their officials said that social innovation, according to them, is not a fixed process, it's not rigid, but it's rather a unique process, and it depends also on the location and circumstances. And of significance about that, and what is so true about it, is that you might have a social innovation and specific processes that you can use to address a specific service delivery challenge. But with a different service delivery challenge, you might have to tweak it a bit and adapt it a bit. They also view social innovation as a bottom-up process. So meaning then that it shouldn't be taken as a top-down process, but there should be participation, that there should be involvement as well as consultation from stakeholders. The fourth result or question posed was about whether these two municipalities had a strategy for the use of social innovation during service delivery. Both of them did not have an explicit strategy for social innovation. The Mangaung Metropolitan Municipal officials indicated that their integrated development plan, so that 5-year plan that I referred to during the first result, that they rather view that specific integrated development plan as well as their growth and development strategy as a vehicle or as a platform to use social innovation and to undertake it or apply it during service delivery. They also refer to initiatives that they were undertaking during that time, such as their youth development policy. The City of Ghent, on the other hand, also reflected on or referred to their multi-annual plan, and they saw that as a key instrument or as a vehicle to facilitate the use of social innovation during service delivery. Their smart city vision, through which they then try to encourage innovation in their city, and also take on a more futuristic approach and looking at the future in terms of service delivery, also became relevant for them in terms of applying social innovation. And then the last result looked at whether the use of social innovation during service delivery is institutionalized within the practices of the local government administration. In other words, in the doing of the administration, the institutional culture, how they plan for service delivery, how they deliver services, how they design services, to which extent is social innovation underpinned by citizen participation part of such an institutional culture and institutionalized. The Mangaung Metropolitan municipal officials indicated that they have support for using innovation, not necessarily social innovation, but innovation at a political and strategic level. So the executive, the council and the strategic manager supported that, but using it, is it institutionalized in its practices? That does not really feature. On the other hand, in the City of Ghent, again, the council, the deputy mayors supported social innovation. They're in favor of co-creation, and social innovation is entrenched in the priorities of the city, and each official is expected to incorporate social innovation into their service delivery activities. The next slide, please. Now, if we can just summarize key recommendations from these results, it brings us to the point of the importance of a strategy that speaks to social innovation. But before we have a strategy, we also need a vision for social innovation. And none of these two municipalities had such a strategy or such a vision. But the development of a social innovation vision, as well as a social innovation strategy, should be developed through a bottom-up approach. It should not only be a vision or a strategy that's implemented at a strategic level, but throughout the organization, and that all officials at the departmental level should be integral to developing such a social innovation vision. If there's not a shared vision, if there's not a unified vision or strategy, the success of social innovation will then not be successful. And then on the last slide, then to conclude, if we look at some of the lessons learned and the practical implications, in the case of the City of Ghent, a decentralized approach to facilitating citizen participation proved to be more successful opposed to a centralized approach. Then citizen participation in terms of practical implications, what must be kept in mind is that planning for citizen participation, especially when you want to use social innovation, it must be meticulously planned. There must be a conducive internal organizational context that advances citizen participation in the governance as well as the decision-making of service delivery. And the value proposition, the contribution of citizen participation should be understood by your political office bearers as well as the officials. And then lastly, ladies and gentlemen, there should be consensus from an organizational perspective about what does social innovation mean for us, How are we going to implement it? When are we going to implement it? And where are we going to implement it? Thank you very much. Gracias.